A private member's bill in Ottawa could kill Enbridge's Northern Gateway project. The proposed pipeline would transport Alberta oil sands crude to Kitimat, BC, and then on to emerging Asian markets via supertankers. Vancouver Quadra MP Joyce Murray wants to ban tanker traffic from the northern coast of BC. Her bill is up for debate in the House of Commons at the end of this month. The premiers of Alberta, BC, and Saskatchewan have written to the Prime Minister asking him to defeat the bill, which they say will limit opportunities to grow Western economies. And Joyce Murray joins me now with more from Ottawa. Good morning.
Good morning, Jim.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
Now, why do you want to ban tanker traffic in this area of northern BC?
Well, Jim, may I give you a bit of context about this bill? Liberals have had a policy of banning tanker traffic on that part of the coast since 1972, when that was first put in place by Liberal Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. And in fact, Liberal and Conservative governments since, until this government, have maintained that policy moratorium. Why?
So it wasn't written anywhere. It was just sort of an unwritten policy.
Well, many policies are not in legislation. This has been a consistent policy, and I believed it was time to formalize that policy because people in British Columbia want that area of the coast protected from the risk of a major oil spill.
Now, the timing of your bill, is this specifically because of the Enbridge project?
Well, I would say the spill in the Gulf of Mexico was more the impetus. I mean, what we saw there is that equipment fails. You can have the safest, you can have the modernest technology, and you can have all sorts of regulatory safeguards, but still, equipment can fail. And we do know from Exxon Valdez, and I'll remind you, a BC coastal ferry that ran aground in those very waters just a few years ago, human failure is not something that can ever be worked out of the system. So we have to know that this is a very dangerous waters. It's not just the coast like a straight line. It's actually channels, inlets. It's rocky, dangerous, howling waters, quite shallow in some places. It's very dangerous waters. So the risk is higher than many other places. And as you probably know, with Spirit Bear Park and some of the very iconic parts of the coast of British Columbia around Haida Gwaii, this is in a way a sacred trust for all Canadians, that we don't foul those waters in a way that would do damage for decades, if not forever.
Now, I mentioned in the introduction that three premiers, the premiers of BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, have sent a letter to the Prime Minister asking him to defeat your bill. Can you tell us the details of that letter?
Well, yes, I was actually very disappointed in the provincial premiers because in their press release it was clear that they took the Enbridge PowerPoint and numbers at face value. And I respect Enbridge's right to lobby and present their case in their interest and do what's good for Enbridge shareholders. But when you have a PowerPoint that takes 1,100 permanent jobs from this project and somehow works it up to be almost 600,000 permanent jobs, like how do you do that? What are your multipliers? I mean, that's crazy. And so unfortunately, the premiers took their presentation at face value because it's through and through their statement. And I'm happy to sit down with any of the premiers and give a counter perspective on this project.
So you don't think the premiers have done their research?
No, they clearly didn't do their research because their letter used the figures straight out of the PowerPoint presentation of Enbridge, which the lobbyists had brought to Ottawa as well as they brought it to Alberta and British Columbia. Probably same figures, same assumptions, and they are wildly inflated. And Jim, do you happen to know how many jobs there are in the coastal communities in this area that we're talking about?
I'm afraid I don't.
Well, it's tens of thousands, and these are good jobs. They're fishing, they're shellfish aquaculture, they're sport fisheries, they're tourism, ecotourism, and they're all through this area of the coast. Those are good jobs. They're at risk, and the communities that depend on those jobs actually get nothing out of a pipeline, but their jobs and those small businesses would be at risk from a spill, and that's why 8 out of 10 British Columbians are for continuing this ban on tanker traffic.
Now, how would you rate the chances of your bill passing the House of Commons?
Well, there's no guarantees, but I'll be working with all of the members of Parliament, and I hope that they will see the logic of environmentally sustainable development versus risky sustainable development, and I think it's got a good chance of passing.
So you're optimistic?
Well, I am, and I'm clear that the Liberals believe in expanding markets for Canada's resource products.
Now, if it survives the vote, the vote in the House of Commons, how is this bill going to fare in the Senate, which is now, of course, controlled by the Conservative Party?
Well, the unelected Conservative senators need to take a good long look at what they're in Ottawa on taxpayers' dollars to do. And historically, it has always been to give a sober second thought to legislation passed by elected representatives, i.e. the MPs. They now have shown us that they're prepared to take a duly passed bill and kill it without a word of debate. But I think there was a big public backlash to Bill C-311 where they did just that, and I would hope that they've learned their lesson and they won't repeat that.
Well, Ms. Murray, we'll keep following this. Thanks again for joining us this morning.
Okay, thanks, Jim, for the opportunity.
That's Vancouver Quadra MP Joyce Murray. She's the author of Bill C-606, which seeks to ban tanker traffic off the coast of northern BC. If it passes, it could kill a proposed pipeline from Enbridge that would transport crude from Alberta's oil sands to Kitimat, BC, and then on to Asian markets via supertanker.